focused on the digital transformation through innovation. And we have 4 different exciting speakers from 4 different parts of industry. The first one will be by Embracing Digital Tech Transformation by Mr. Gergi Abboud. The second one will be about data-driven innovation by Dr. Bat Valdamani. And the third one will be Empowering the Digital Economy Transformation by Dr. Bat. The second one is by Mr. Tansel Oakley. And the third one is the Digital Transformation of Industry by Mr. Ali Saleh. Each presentation will be about 20 minutes. And we'll finish all the discussions, and then we'll have the panel sit here so that you can fire away questions. Hopefully by then you'll be fully awake. Our first speaker, Mr. Gergi Abboud, he is the Managing Director for SAP MENA, Gulf, North Africa, and Pakistan. He's been he's responsible for the in-country growth for all these services. He brings with him 15 years of experience in working in different IT and multinationals in the Middle East and Africa. Prior to joining SAP, Gergi held a position as regional sales manager at Cisco in Qatar and grew up through the organization doing different roles as well. Gergi has a degree in computer communication engineering right from here, from AUB. So Gergi, please.
Good afternoon. So I get the pleasure to wake you up after lunch. Okay. So I think we had the pleasure to listen to our speakers in the morning and colleagues and the panelists around that big data is a force to reckon with. Nothing to. It's not the future, it's here. The data is there. I remember, I'll share with you a story that not a long time ago, and most of my stories are practical because I live on the customer side, so you won't see a lot of theory, but more practice in my discussion. When we had the largest oil companies in the Gulf region, and we spoke about big data a couple of years ago with them, most of them looked at us and said, what you're talking about, this is in the States. We don't have a big data problem. Actually, I can put all my transactional data on a disk that I can buy from eBay or anywhere. A couple of terabytes, and I'm good, I can run. We put it on big storage just because we would love to have better speed and reliability. Now, little we knew back then, including myself, that the data wasn't in their transactional systems. It actually was in all the systems around it. And you'll hear from maybe potentially colleagues from GE who have industrial systems. There's data that's being thrown from every system left and right, but nobody had the capability before to look at it. Now, data is even volunteered at the social level. I mean, social media can be mined as data. I've actually I've asked my team to run a nice demo on social sentiment around the presidential election. But I decided not to show it because I thought maybe it's too political. And being Lebanese, maybe that might be perceived wrongly. But it's very interesting that you can pull out of these systems immediately and look at trends. Suddenly, an important event in our social life, in our political life in Lebanon, which everybody was waiting for a while, had an impact on social media. Now, if I'm a company that I want to do analysis, I want to look at it in any way, that data is useful. You can turn it into information. You can use that information for better services, for any business models you can think of. Hence, my discussion is mainly around how you embrace that. So, digital transformation is not a trend. It's not one of these, big data could be a trend, a buzzword. Digital transformation is the accumulation of all of them, and it's actually an economy. And if you look at, I think we crossed the knowledge economy, because not only that knowledge is commoditized, You don't need to come to university to pick up a book. I'm sorry, I studied here. But you do not need a book anymore to find the knowledge. Knowledge is free. It has been commoditized. It's available. Anybody can access it. The question is, what do you do with it? How do you apply it? How do you have the right mindset to keep on learning? And if you look at that and apply it into businesses, and you look at the digital economy that's being created now as we speak, I've decided to use a couple of examples so we can illustrate the discussion. Now, I wish I could put this. I'm struggling to stay here. But anyway, so I'll use part of the digital economy. Some new companies came up, purely digitally native, and I'm going to start with one of them. Have you used Uber? I know that example has been, if you've been to conferences, it has been overkill, to be honest. But the point is that I would like to make is more not around that. What do you think, in which business they are? Can someone, you need to participate with me. I know you just had your lunch, but I too. Sorry? Taxi. All right. So this is how they started. Little they knew. They're billionaires now, but little they knew. All right. Thank you. Hello? Yeah? Perfect. So I can move around. Okay, so I can interact with you, and you can, so I can wake you up from your lunch. So little they knew, they thought they were going into a taxi business. They were in a conference in Paris. I'm sure you've read the story. They got frustrated, couldn't find a taxi. They said, we can leverage the platform. Why can't I use a mobile phone and locate a cab? And they came up with a company that started this. Now, last August, I was having lunch in San Francisco with a friend of mine who's a classmate from here, CCE 2000, Ralph, I'll use his name. And Ralph moved to Uber. And I was like, really? Taxi company? You used to work for Yahoo? I know Yahoo is not a great company anymore, but I mean, still, you can move to Google. Why Uber? What do you do with them? And I knew that his major is he's in data science. And he said, well, we're a data company. I mean, our founders realized that it's no longer a taxi play. Yes, we are a use case of the largest taxi in the world that doesn't own a single taxi. We challenge the business model of owning assets, but actually the real asset we own is digital, it's data. So when they have teams of people that do data mining, this is all what they do. And you know, his department, he's responsible of putting algorithm to figure out how to match supply with demand. And supply in their case and demand are real time. It's like us now having a conference here, we walk out, we all want cabs. Their job is to predict this, and guess what? A lot of this data is not in their transactional system, it's on the web. So their job is to figure out how to pick up that we tweeted, all of us here, how many tweets came out from how many mobiles, and potentially how many numbers that do not live here, figuring out potentially statistically how many of us didn't come with our own cars, but we need an Uber, and make sure to push that demand ahead of time to their supply. So the drivers can be at the right time to pick up the opportunity. Now that's a beautiful customer experience if you think of it, but also it sets expectation. I land in Pakistan, pick up my phone, I come to Pakistan, and I go on to an Uber because now my mind is like, I don't need to think about the taxi, and I don't find supply because they don't have it yet on their map of looking and mining the data of that country. Now, that's a data play, and when you start looking at it, all what they do now, all the adjacent businesses they're doing is built on top of that data mine. As simple as that. It's pure data play, their assets are digital, and they're born in that economy. And this is how they're evaluated, because people are looking at, why do you think they're evaluated as $70 billion? They don't make money, by the way, they lose money, they spend it because now they want to drive more data into the system. The only reason they're evaluated so much, because we do not understand the infinite potential of that data. So everybody is looking at this could be done in 600, 700 ways to be monetized. And that's the potential of this data. So when in the morning, Professor Usman touches on, this is the new oil and it's free. It is. It is. And the beauty of it, it's available. We don't have to wait until the parliament figure out how to take oil out of Lebanon. It's available. We can unleash the potential of the brains of our community. So, now, if you look at it from that perspective, then you would say, what happened to the knowledge companies who existed in the knowledge economy? How can they transition? And I decided to pick, I couldn't make up my mind. There were like 600 examples, and these are SAP clients, to figure out what would be relevant. And every time I met someone here and they said, like I met Muna, she said from the Middle East, I said, oh my God, I could have put an airline case there and talk about route profitability and how to customize it on a specific. So there are plenty of cases, and every industry is looking, it's not about technology. Technology is the easiest part. It's about how to look at the business process and reinvent it and look and leverage the data assets that exist today. Not the data assets that we're used to, the customers that touches our database back in the server locked in a room. It's the assets that they exist freely out there across, outside of the boundaries of the organization. So let me touch a bit on eBay. eBay has, it's an auction marketplace. That's what they do, this is how they got built in the internet-based in the 2000s. So they gathered 50 petabytes of data. And if you're from IT, you don't understand this, they put it in a standard, in an aggregated way in a data warehouse. When you aggregate that, the best you can do is analyze trends. Because at the top, you lose the context of the data. Now, their job is also the same if you look at it from an Uber perspective. What their job is to make sure that they push their sellers to the best sweet spot of price at the right time. That's their value add. Then the platform flourishes. Now, today, or previously, yesterday, they used to be able to run patterns so and at the product category. So let's say shoes. They will look at it and say there's a spike in shoes. Let's push all our sellers to position their shoes and increase a bit the auctioning pricing on it because there's demand. So supply should be more demanding on pricing. Now, that could be great, but this is very generic. What we managed to do with them is to take this into a completely different space. We managed to take them and give them the analytics to go deep inside immediately when they look in real time, we're talking, because these take seconds and people are auctioning, is if there's a spike of shoes, immediately narrow down to why and go to which product. Is it sports shoes? Great, why? Which brand? This brand? Is there any contextual data out there that can link to this? Oh my God, yes, there are a spike of tweets that are retweeting a player of basketball who just said these were the best sneakers on earth. Now, what do you do with this data suddenly? You can push exactly the right seller to immediately to put the right price point. And this is much more valuable on a platform game. And this takes eBay into a completely different space. Now we go a bit on more traditional business. Vodafone, telco, which everybody knows it's like they're struggling to figure out, telcos are struggling, not Vodafone, telcos in general, are struggling to figure out how to generate new revenue streams because they're being commoditized. So they're the tunnel these days. So if you look at their case, who works in telco here? Anybody who worked in telco? So you know what an ARPU is? Yeah? So we love acronyms, we're talking about this. So average revenue per user, average margin per user. So in the telco days, 15 years ago, ARPU was the benchmark. Oh, what's your ARPU? That's the biggest thing. Because they were booming, nobody cared about what's the margin, because as long as you know the top line, bottom line at the overall business, you don't need the granularity. However, everybody starts saying, yeah, your ARPU is big, but my margin is much better. Look at my AMPU, which is the average margin per user. Now, the average, the A, is very important. Why? Because there's no way on earth they can be able, with the previous technology, to be able to associate the right cost of the infrastructure for each user. So basically, when they provide a product for you, when they send us all 1 gig roaming data package at $100, and they push it to everyone, and even the people who never travels outside of the country, they're not able to customize that data because they can't associate the cost with it. What we were able to do with them is use big data, but allowing them to do also granular data analysis. Go down to the level of each individual based on their behavior in real time. Meaning, I will pick up the behavior of Gergi. He lives in Dubai, he carries a UAE mobile number, and he travels every week. Now, I don't want to give him big data packages for Dubai, because he's never in Dubai. He can survive with 1 gig, but I want to give him 5 gig of usage as data roaming, and charge him the money for it, the premium for it. Guess what? I would be willing to subscribe for that. Today, I feel that I'm paying extra money for data that I don't use in Dubai, but I pay not enough for data when I'm roaming. And it goes the other way around. And this way, you'll be able to manage the margin per user so that your business model becomes much more beneficial, not only from a profit point of view, but also from a customer experience, which is even more important. Third example is Under Armour. Have you heard of Under Armour? Sportswear? So they're not coming. I mean, I never heard of them until SAP said, well, we're partnering with Under Armour. What do they do? So they are competing with Nike and Adidas. They're shaking, actually, the industry. All right. So they acquired digital assets. So if you have the apps, MyFitnessPal and MapMyRun, they went and bought all these apps. So today, Under Armour collects data from everyone that uses these apps on running, sports, any sports you do. These apps monitor your behavior. Guess what? That's great. What is the business value behind it? They connected this. If you hear their CEO's vision and how we deployed this using our system, they deployed that data straight to their supply chain. Meaning, if they pick up the trend of a lot of running of specific category of customers, they have them in their transaction database, so they know the customers. They link it immediately to what kind of shoes I need to ship to New York versus to Dubai in real time. So if there is the run that I saw here that across the marathon that was done, if Under Armour exists in this country, in Lebanon, they would have noticed this 6 months or 3 months, as soon as it's announced. And they would have predicted their supply chain, which is very important in the business. They would have, this is monetizing data in real time through your supply chain. And that will change the whole play. So you walk to an IT store, you don't find the shoes you want because they never thought that there's enough people running today. But you walk to Under Armour, not only you'll find the running shoes, you'll find your favorite and your size. So they increase the chances of pushing the demand to the supply using digital assets. Now, I'm going to wrap up. I think I'll move to one practical thing at the end, so just to make it more simplified. I had some statistics to share with you, but I'll go straight to it. If you look at, if you want to ask me, how can we leverage this? If we're companies that are in Lebanon, how do I leverage such an opportunity? We need to rethink the business model. Do not take, I've heard it so many times from CEOs, they will meet with us and they will go, I've got this process, help me put it on mobile. Well, guess what? You're missing on the big opportunity. This is not how it works. It's, what are you trying to achieve as a business? And let me tell you how it's done much more efficiently in today's technology. So you need the flexibility at the core of your enterprise. And your enterprise is no longer locked within the wall from a business process. It's gonna touch your customers straight to their mobile, which is a personal thing that they take home and they keep with them. Your business will touch your suppliers through networks, and no longer the days of, I only work with one supplier, because there are networks they digitize where you can, each transaction can be done every time on a new contract digitally and find the best supplier that you need in every country. And then your workforce has changed, and this goes back to EUD. If you're graduating new students, please make sure that their minds are open to the potential of how the new workforce should be. And then on top of that, We heard the data that's booming. IoT just kicked in, and by 2018, IoT alone will generate 403 trillion gigabytes. So that's in a year, 24 months, 2 years. All right? So you can see the scale of data and the potential. If you apply the same logic of a digital economy on top of that, you can take your thinking into what new business models and opportunities. And finally, I just want to say, when you look at that, just keep things practical, although some of them look crazy as ideas. You have always to follow the simple logic of desirability, what's the need, the feasibility, is it technically feasible, and the viability, is it economically viable today to change that business model. And with that, thank you very much, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Gergi. I thought that was very exciting, and hopefully people are awake.